Okay, here we go. Let's see if we can get everybody in here. Hey, guys.
Hi, everybody.
So hopefully everybody is at least familiar enough with Zoom to know how to use it. You'll have your little chat window, which is the balloon down there, and click on that. I've muted everybody because if we had everybody talking at once and we'd have feedback and it would be cats and dogs sleeping together and the end of the world as we know it. Hello, Lolly. So this is Marcy and Catherine Tilton, and as we all know, they are the consummate creatives when it comes to fabric. Their fabrics are just absolutely out of this world. I really feel honored and excited to have both of them here kind of for a whole hour to share their wonderful blessings of creativity with us, which will be so much fun. If you have any questions to ask, you should have the chat window up on the right side. At the very bottom, just ask questions here, and we'll go from there. We're going to start first with kind of a little bit of their background, because it's always fun to me to know how people started. And so with that, this is Catherine on the left and Marcy on the right, and welcome to our little group. Tell us a little bit about how you got started sewing and kind of what interested you.
Yeah, I got to start because actually I learned to sew first. Oh. I had a really good friend in the 8th grade, a wild Irish woman named Sheila. We're still friends. And her mother wanted to get her out of the house. She was the oldest girl of about 7, and her mother wanted her out of the house one summer. So she called my mom, and they sent us to sewing classes to Mrs. Crinky. We got on the bus once a week, and off we went. And I remember distinctly the first thing I made, which was a shirtwaist dress with a little Peter Pan collar and a little floral print with a covered belt. Ooh. And then I made a pair of khaki Bermudas, and I brought them home, and Marcy looks at them and says, "Oh, I can do that."
She's the older sister here.
Yeah. And so she took home economics in high school.
No, actually what happened to me is, because Catherine sewed first, then in high school, I took a written test, and
that's what I was referring to.
I was the Betty Crocker Homemaker of Tomorrow in my high school junior class. Another one.
Oh.
Yeah, there's others out there. And so the nuns came to me and said, "Dear, we think maybe you should learn something." And so they took me out of my study hall and they put me in the sewing room with Sister Margaret Mary, and she taught me to sew. And so then we both were sewing. And coincidentally, my mom won a sewing machine in a draw at Montgomery Ward's. Ooh. So we each had our own sewing machine.
Oh, no.
Was that the only one?
And we had lots of fights about it. And
I love it.
And I finally just went, never mind, I'm not sewing anymore, until I was, I think, a junior in college, so this is years later, and I needed a dress for a dance, and Marcy said, "I will help you make one," because by this time she was majoring in home economics. And so she helped me make the dress, and then a couple years later she taught all of our women friends how to sew. We would go to her house and we'd be down on the floor cutting things out, and then Marcy went on to start the sewing workshop in San Francisco.
Oh, and, wonderful.
Yeah. And then Catherine kind of went off into the fine art world and was a weaver and a painter.
Well, I actually had a line of hand-painted clothing for years.
Right.
And then I had another life, and Marcy had moved up here to Oregon and wanted to start doing the big Puyallup sewing show. And I was at a transition point, and I didn't know where to go. And Marcy said, "Oh, come up to Oregon, move in with me," because I had been doing lots and lots of art and craft fairs, the jury kind. And she said, "You know what to do with those shows," and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it just kind of moved from one to the other. I love how you all kind of moved into fabrics, and then was that just kind of a natural evolution, or was that really intentional?
Well, it was organic. I was teaching. So I had the sewing workshop in San Francisco. I started the sewing workshop in San Francisco, which was only a school. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved to Oregon, I continued to teach, but I taught at the big sewing shows. Ultimately, Diane Erickson and I started Design Outside the Lines. Mm-hmm. So at those retreats in particular, I would bring a few fabrics. And then I was going to LA with my boyfriend at the time, and I would knock around the garment district and find fabrics. And so this fabric business got started in my sewing studio in the house with a half a dozen bolts of cotton lycra. Then there came a day where we were both designing for the pattern companies. I was designing for Vogue. Catherine originally was designing for Vogue, right. And then it was too confusing to have two Tiltons on the masthead. We don't really know why, but they moved Catherine to Butterick. Mm-hmm. So periodically, we get a royalty check for the patterns that we've developed, which we refer to as getting rich very, very slowly. And so on this particular occasion, and it was about 10, 11 years ago, one of my patterns was a big hit, and it was the end of August. I got a check that was a really nice surprise. There was a wholesale fabric show in 2 or 3 weeks. So I said, we are going to take this check and we are going to go to Las Vegas, not to gamble on.
There was a trade show.
A trade show.
Wholesale.
So we went to Las Vegas and we started buying fabric. And the very first day, we cruised around and looked and talked to people and bought carefully. We went out to dinner that night, and Catherine has all the receipts and the tally. So how much did we spend today? So I had a figure in my mind. She figured it out. It was the same. And I said, great, we're going to go back tomorrow and buy more. Uh-huh. And so it's just grown very organically from that.
Cool. And well, it really helped because when we started doing that big show at the Washington State Fairgrounds, Marcy was focusing on silk screens. So we had this elaborate setup, how to show all our silk screens. It was insane. But she also had this really wonderful cotton lycra that she had found in about 6 or 8 colors. Mm-hmm. And what we discovered over a couple years doing that big show is that the fabric is what sold. Uh-huh. And the fabric is what people wanted. So the silk screens are long gone, mm-hmm. and the fabric has continued. And Marcy started this business kind of right at the right time. Mm-hmm. And so it was the right time. This was certainly the right place because it was easy. We're in a rural area. You can't find anything out here. There are no stores at all, no fabric stores at all. And the right time, the right place.
And the other right thing that happened, here we are on the internet. Mm-hmm. So fast forward back 15 years. This could not have happened 15 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So right about the time that I found those 6 bolts of cotton lycra, and we were doing the silk screens, I found somebody in Grants Pass who would build me a website. And he then taught me how to do the website. And I have to say, for me, it was an aha moment like learning how to sew. Uh-huh. Because when he showed me what could be done on the backside of a website, I loved it. Yeah. And so now we've got another website and another guy who's magnificent, who's taught mm-hmm. me so much. So it's the combination of a lot of things. And one of them is, for me, knowing how to do the backside of the website. And I do all the photography on the website. So that was a real wake-up call for me because I started out with a little camera, not knowing what I was doing. Now I have a big camera mm-hmm.
and is obsessed.
And I have fallen in love with photography as a form to show the fabric, because I really wanted to show fabric as it would drape and look on a body. So I use a mannequin. So you can scale of the fabric. So all these things are synchronistic and magical and have come together for us.
Well, so one of the things I love about your site is how beautifully curated all your fabrics are. I mean, I go to a lot of fabric stores and a lot of all over the world, and your site seems to be filled with so many creative, imaginative selections. That how do you go about what qualifies for what meets your standard, because your standard is pretty high. I mean, the quality of your fabrics is just, it's wonderful. The hand is wonderful. The touch is wonderful. But is it just because you've sewn for a while, you've been close to them, or what meets your standard?
I think that's a lot of it.
That's a lot of it. We pick fabric that we would want to work with. So the touch, the design, the drape, the fiber content, how current is it? And it's interesting just even talking about colors, because we go all over the world to wholesale shows and look at what colors are coming out. So I start looking at those colors, what patterns. For years, we should be in Paris right now. Sadly, we're not. We're home and happy to be home. But we go to Paris and we look there in the windows. We talk to people. We look at the people in the street. And
try on clothes that we like.
Yeah, and we bring that back home. And we're very aligned in what we like. So when we go fabric shopping at a big wholesale show, there are two of us, and we pick a pile and then we high grade it. And then oftentimes we'll go back a day or two later and scoop something else up. And I love to surprise Catherine, because sometimes I'll pick a fabric and go, what?
Marcy is full of surprises. Yeah, she will find things and I'll be like, are you nuts? And sometimes I'm right on. And other times she's like, no, I really like this. I'm going to get this. And boom, it sells out.
Well, one of the things you all do so much that I just absolutely love are your cool combos. And I think it's a real art when you can, pull together several different prints and make them work. And talk a little bit about how you create your cool combos, because to me that's just sheer artistry.
So our cool combos are composed of 3 yards of fabric and 3 yards of knit fabric, and it can be 2 1.5 yard cuts. So what I'm wearing today came out of one of our cool combos.
Greenstone.
Yeah. And we did this to help people pull things together that they might not think of on their own, or in some cases, both of us use a lot of stripes and dots as blenders. So we've got some combos that are just for blending, for kind of popping in a little binding or sleeve or...
Well, and for instance, just looking at you, Marcy has a gray and cream stripe here that goes with this green and that's in the combo. But I'm noticing that the dots are pretty cute too. So she used the dots. And I consider stripes and dots as neutrals because they can be mixed with almost anything. And we're kind of crazy about stripes and dots. I have on a woven shirt and I combine stripes in it. I've got stripe and a couple of variations on gray and white stripes. And Marcy has striped sleeves.
And then I had a little scrap left from something else that I put in here. So like painters, as sewists, you can't work from an empty wagon. You need a palette. We need fabric, you need patterns, you need thread, you need buttons. I mean, it's like our art supplies.
Right.
You know, a painter can't paint without brushes and turpentine and a palette and paper,
Right.
all those things. And our fabric, that's our art supplies.
So when we get a shipment in of new things, in particular, we do the cool combos with knits. We've done it with wovens in the past. It just kind of depends upon what's available to us. Right. Mm-hmm. So if we get a group of things that we can put together as a woven, we'll do that. But what I would say to all of you, and some of you are quilters, I know, and quilters are really good at putting together a stash and putting together a harmony. And mm-hmm. that's really what it's like. And so we look for,
well, we look at tons and tons of fabrics. And one of the things that we didn't talk about earlier with Claire was, and this goes back to being at the shows. Some of the shows have ready-made fabrics, and then other booths at the shows have just like samples of that they buy from designers of patterns. Not sewing patterns, but design patterns. And so we go through those, Marcy and I. And again, we pull out anything that we respond to somehow. And then we sit down and we high grade. So we're going to show you some fabrics that we just got the samples from the mill. This is from a mill in France. And we picked out, sometimes from a piece of paper, like this is a really fun floral. You know, flowers are so beautiful, especially for spring. And so this was a floral that appealed to both of us. And we have this color background coming, this teal color, and then we also have it on a coral color that's really beautiful. So somebody could combine those two together. But we also picked out this one. Do you want to hold that one up, Marcy?
Oh, I love those.
Spring. And we get them and we go, oh, well, those would work together.
You might want to
them. You know,
or here's another one that we did.
Oh, this one is fun. Yeah, this is really fun.
Because in the ready-to-wear world, panels are super popular. So we've started carrying panels. So in this case, now
we designed the pattern. We chose 2 different panels. So you can have one image on the front, and they're a collage of images, and one image on the back. Or you could use it as an element in another garment. You could buy 2 panels, and it could be a sleeve.
It could be a sleeve. It could be pieced. It could be, you know, you don't have to use the whole thing. So we look for things that we like. We look for things that are, I particularly like basics. I like good, solid color basics. So we try to carry a lot of those too. So, you know, solid color linens and that kind of thing.
Right. And things that combine with this as a pant or whatever.
One of the things that you do so well, or like just right there, just instantly, is matching. Could a customer email you and say something like, I just love that panel. Do you have something that would go with that and kind of help them create their kind of own cool combo? Something along?
We can't promise to create individual cool combos. But if a customer says, I really love that panel, and this probably will become part of a cool combo, they can email and they can say, I want to make a pant that'll work with that. And then our staff will go into our woven room and hold it up and see if there's a woven that it'll work with.
Right. So it's like you need to do your homework.
Yeah, as a customer, we want you to find something you really like, and then come to us and say, for instance, blues can be tricky. People love to match a blue. So they'll say, I want to use this particular fabric. Can you find something in a knit for a t-shirt? can you find a stripe? Now, it's not always possible. We have a lot of fabric, but
we can't always find things that go together.
Yeah.
And we run into that, you know, when we're doing our own. But for instance, Claire loved Isadora, which is the name of this fabric. And she said, I'm a warm blonde. Or you said warm, but I knew you were blonde. And she said, what do you have that goes with it? And I carried this around, you know, this piece of fabric, and ended up with a stripe, which I love. Yeah, there's Claire showing everybody. Because this stripe has a warm white, a cream in there that went perfectly with this. But then I also found this one, which is called Lola. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And so she got a little bit of Lola too.
So this kind of gives the pop of color, and Claire used it in a really perfect way. So because the scale of how you're going to use things really impacts the final effect. So she used Isadora for the front, but the stripe for the back, and then just a tiny little bit of this one, which is much more vivid and bold on the undercollar.
Right, and just, I love doing that. Well, that's wonderful to know. This leads into something else that I think everybody would like to hear about, and that is your suggestion for all of us on how to purchase online, because I think you hear a lot about, oh gosh, I just am worried I'd make a mistake and what would happen. So what are as pros, what are your suggestions?
Well, one of the things about online shopping, more and more people are getting used to it. And I kind of compare it back to remember when you first heard about sergers? What is a serger? And, it's expensive and it's hard and, well.
Can't thread it.
I can't thread it, whatever. Now, I bet a lot of you have sergers in your sewing room. Some of you even have 2 sergers set up. So shopping for fabric on the internet is a little bit like that. You have to get used to the idea first. And as more and more of us are buying more and more stuff on the internet, more people who sew are becoming comfortable with it. So,
and you'll do samples too.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
The samples go out on Friday. So the first thing I suggest if you're going to buy on the internet is go into the policies and information about the website.
On your website. Right.
On the website. This will tell you if they do samples, what the return policy is, all those kinds of things. It's like we do our best writing the descriptions to list everything that we possibly can. If there's a repeat in the pattern and you want to know that that's listed in there. And so it's a lot of it is do your research, do your homework, and then you got to jump in.
And one thing I'll mention here is we sell by the half yard, and sometimes people get upset about that and accuse us of trying to cheat them, and that's not the case at all. The reality of it is that it's based on our website, which is like a store. So the store was already set up. We didn't build a building and then put rooms into it. The rooms were already there. And the template for our website is set up to sell in units. So if you were selling a t-shirt or
a cup, a mug,
you can buy 2 of them, but you can't buy a half. So we decided when we set up the website that rather than sell in full yards, we would sell in half yards. And at the time, it was a little more unusual. Now I see more and more online stores are selling this way too.
Well, it's so reasonable because like you look at a pair of pants, a 1.5 is great for a pair of pants, but 1 doesn't do it. 2 is too much. And so I happen to like when you can do that. It makes sense to me, and it keeps me from the neuroses of what am I going to do with this leftover, too much leftover. And so you're saving the mental health of a lot of people.
I was just thinking that people who are accustomed to working with 5/8 could probably make the transition
to a half.
To a half.
Right.
And to figuring yardage. But and if somebody messes it up and they're a first-time customer, we will make it right. If somebody gets a piece of fabric they don't like and they want to send it back, they can send it back. You know, and I'm surprised at how rarely this happens.
Well, that I think attests to the beauty of your fabrics. I think once the box opens up and they go, oh, because I'm always thrilled to see what I see. You all also design patterns, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about, like, how long does it take to design a pattern? Just from, you design both for Marcy for Vogue and Catherine for Butterick, and so what is that?
We work way far out. So I've just been working on spring 21-21, and I have been working on that for a couple of months. And I didn't bring the prototypes for that with me, but I did bring some prototypes for my newest pattern, which just hit the streets. Before I show you that, let me just give you an overview of how it works. So I will send concepts to the design director at Vogue, and they used to just say, do whatever you want. Now things have gotten reined in a little bit more. They're not producing as many patterns as they used to. In the olden days, there was a pattern book every month, and there would be 30 or 35 new patterns. Now, for a year, and maybe 20 patterns in each book.
Wow.
So they need to have, it's like putting together a bouquet. They need to have, some basics and a cocktail dress and some pants and whatever. So they look at what has sold well for us. And then we will pitch them. So for the pattern that just came out, we did a dress that's also a tunic. For the next one, for spring 21-21, it's a shirt. We start sometimes with a concept, sometimes with pictures of things we've seen, or with garments or groups of garments that we want to work with. And we brainstorm it, and we'll send ideas and sometimes even garments to our pattern maker. The pattern maker makes the pattern. She makes it a size 10, and she'll make it in other sizes for us. For me, I work with a group of pattern testers. And so there are 4 fabulous women who sew at the same time I'm sewing. Mm-hmm. And for years, I've worked with the fabulous Gwen Spencer, who is one of the best designers, sewists, and sewing buddies a girl could want. So Gwen will come down and work with me in my studio. And oftentimes she's got an advanced copy of the pattern. She's already made one for herself. I've made one for myself. We come out here into the barn with all the fabric. We pick fabric. We go into the sewing room. And we truly nerd out. Mm-hmm. We sew and talk sewing.
It's a swell kind of nerding out to be.
Really fun. And we write the directions. Sometimes the pattern testers, the other women are doing it at the same time. Mm-hmm. So that we get a lot of different options for what kind of details we want to use, what kind of fabrics we want to use. We make mistakes. Sometimes we have to throw the whole thing away and start over.
So in other words, I guess the point here is that when we purchase your pattern, shouldn't think that if we have to make a few adjustments and it take us a week, that we're really speeded up because you all have done most of the heavy lifting in designing the pattern.
Well, here's an interesting point too, is that we make these garments, we make more than one. And I think one of the big learnings for people who make their own clothes is to take a pattern and do it over and over again. And over and over again.
Because I know when I sew these over and over again, I get the thought, well, this is kind of boring. I've done this before. So then it gives me ideas of how I can change it, or how I can sew part of it together in a more efficient way.
Right.
It's just, it makes it really fun. Or maybe I want to make this shirt, but I want to try a different collar on it. And so just like all creativity, everything that we do leads to the next thing. And so those of us who have been sewing for years and years, we have those 10,000 hours. We're back there.
Yeah.
And so we just go. But I know, and we make lots of mistakes. We were talking about this today. Nobody sees our mistakes, you know. If something I make doesn't work on me, I have friends that are very lucky and they get it if they want it. But one time, I've done a lot of juried art fairs, and one time I set a goal for myself to make 30 t-shirts for this art fair. And I will tell you, the t-shirt number 27, 28, and 29, I had to rip the neckline off of each one of those 3 times.
Before you did it, yeah.
I made 25 t-shirts before that.
And I think you said something very salient there, and Catherine, and that is just go. It's sort of like just do it, because I think the whole concept in the art and the practice of doing it is so vital and so important. You
have to do it. And if you're starting, for instance, knits like terrify some people. If you're starting with knits, start with a stable knit. You know, a ponte, a double knit, something that has some substance, not those little thin, wimpy jersey things that are in all the commercial t-shirts out there. You know, you have to be really good to sew with those and have the right equipment. So it's like, start with a good piece of fabric, and you're going to make mistakes. That's part of the deal.
I love it. I love it. You do. God knows, nobody's seen my mistakes either, and there are a ton of them out there. So I love you guys that you both, designed for both Butterick and Vogue, and I think they've recently sold. And I'd love to get kind of your opinion about what you see as the future for the big 4 pattern companies.
They're not going away. They're going to be around.
Well, and the big 4 have a history of being sold and bought and sold and bought over the years and being run differently. So they're not going to go away. I hope that they're going to get more efficient. We visited Vogue Butterick McCall's Quick Sew Marfie
January
in their new offices, and the employees were happy. They moves back and forth. They say it's really nice to be all in one office together. They work with the sewers and the designers. So that said, they're not going to go anywhere. But I also really welcome the presence of the independents. I think that fills a really important niche too. And when we first put up our brand new website, I got the sweetest note from Ann Steves, who owns Gorgeous Fabrics. And she sent me an email that said, "Congratulations, the new website is beautiful. It's a high tide that floats all the boats." And I think that same thing is true of all the independent pattern companies. Anybody who's doing anything
for sewing,
because there are people making product and producing tailor's hams, and their husbands are in the wood shop making clappers, and there's so much, so rich right now for all of us. So I think we're lucky to have all of it, to have online, to have the retailers who have stayed in business. People like Stone Mountain in Berkeley, which is an old family.
Treadle in St. Paul.
Right. There's some really great small sewing stores out there, and they need and deserve to be supported.
I love that. Well, I just wanted to kind of get your inside view on all of that. One of the questions from one of the students I had was talking about how's the best way to understand a repeat in your fabrics. You said sometimes the repeat doesn't matter, sometimes it does. And how do you show that on your fabrics online?
Well, when I photograph a fabric, a big fabric with a print, anything that has a repeat, I photograph it on actually this rack that I have my clothes on here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the repeat.
So you can
always
photograph
see the
it on the rack, so you can get a visual on it, and you can get a visual if it's a one-way design. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we shoot the same fabric on a mannequin, so you can see how the design will lay on a body.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the description, we will say it has a 23-inch repeat. It has a 40-inch repeat, whatever it is. And well, as a sewing teacher to people who make clothes, I really recommend you always cut all your pattern pieces going the same direction. So that's something you would absolutely do if there was a repeat in a garment.
No matter, even if the repeat was upside down or anything, or it had no right or wrong side, just have the repeat, whatever it is, go the same direction always.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Good general.
I love that.
Well, it's the same way that it would be either on the knitting machine for a knit or on the loom. For the, you want it. It goes the same way, unless it's a quilting fabric, and then it's so tightly woven that it probably doesn't matter.
Right. Well, and also, what do you think about having Pantone colors as kind of a guide for colors?
Okay, we tried. I definitely, when I first set up the website, I went to Pantone. I bought the fan that was recommended at the time for fabric, and it was about $150, I forget. It didn't work. The chips are on paper, and we're working with fabric. The subtleties and nuances of colors weren't really in there. I know some sewing people they own the fan and they use the fan. But in my universe of customers, I've had so few who really use this that my preference is we describe warm or cool.
And the other thing that we haven't talked about is that everyone's color monitor is different.
Oh, yeah.
Marcy works really, really hard photographing and balancing the colors. And then, I put it on my monitor, it looks different. You're going to put it on your monitor, it's going to look different.
Right.
And I remember having that Pantone chart. Marcy's like, well, go out and, find out what the number is. Well, I was looking at like this. Now, I might be able to match the background, the fabric I was looking at, like that one. Grab that one for me, Mark. Yeah.
This one.
Lola, what color am I going to say? And it didn't match the chips that I had in the book, didn't match anything. And it took forever. And there's kind of a finite amount of that can go in, and I think the photos are much more important. And the description. And we just Friday, yesterday when I came in to get the mail, there was an envelope from somebody with a sample of fabric, and she said, do you have a fabric, such a fabric that will go with this?
Yeah.
And of course you sampled them.
We have the fabric in hand, like you did, Claire. You said, I like Isadora, what goes with it?
Right.
So it's like you've got the start. You're not reinventing the wheel.
So in essence, somebody can either send you something, or you can ask for samples, which is a great way so that they can say, okay, Isadora is in my color range, and then they can come back, email you and say, what would look good with this? What do you have? So that they could work.
They can even say, I'm going to Europe and putting together a core going to Europe. Now that's a dream in this day.
Yeah,
and age.
Yeah, I know. But we'll get there again, hopefully.
But you can also say, I'm going to be mother of the bride, even on Zoom, and I wear blue. What could you put together? And then our team can work with that.
That's
so,
great.
Yeah, we give really good customer service.
Real quick, I know a bunch of you came in late, and right down here there is, if you put your cursor there, you can see chat. You can see the chat balloon. I just want to tell everybody that you can click that and you can ask questions in the chat. And one of the questions I got is from Jan, and she wants to know, what can we do to encourage new and young people to sew?
Well, first of all, they have to be interested.
I think that the pandemic has been really good for people learning to sew. So I think people have come back.
If nothing else.
To make the mask so that we can feel like we're contributing, making a contribution. And then being at home, having time, you can't buy an entry-level sewing machine anymore. They've all sold out. Because people are sewing. And you start making masks and you go, well, this is kind of fun. Masks are putsy. But it's like, oh, I'm making something, and I can take it and I can give it to the postal person and I can give it to somebody at the grocery store if I want to. And so I think actually it's been a good thing for sewing.
And so to Jan, I would say, because this really relates to what happened to me, is the nun said to me, dear, we think maybe you have some talent here. Now, the thought had never once occurred to me, frankly. But once I got my fingers into the fabric, I was hooked. And so not every kid is going to love it. But Jan, if you've got kids in your life, support them. We have 2 nieces who sew, and we send them stuff all the time. We send them fabric and zippers and sewing machines and whatever to support them. So it might be a friend or a friend of a friend. That I think it's kind of organic, and it's the oral tradition of passing it down.
Well, and it's like it's the old think globally and act locally.
Great.
That's true.
Who is in your life that you can support? Is it a small child that you're going to give, some felt and a great big huge needle and some yarn that they can sew something that you're going to teach them?
Well, and I love what the Great British Sewing Bee did for sewing in England. And I wish we had something like that, even if we could, and this is just my thought, just even if we could just get that video or the copyrights to it here. I would love that. We have another question from Barbara, and she wants to know, she loves, don't we all see color differently? Also, color is very subjective. Do you think it's better not to be so matchy-matchy?
Oh, well, that's totally the fashion. That is what is happening in the fashion world.
Yeah, it's not matchy-matchy at all.
No.
It's so unmatchy. To my eye, much of the time, it's confusing. But I
think one of the ways we learn is not by being tight and matchy-matchy, but by stretching parameters and trying new things and being willing to make mistakes. It's like, remember Mr. Rogers? Remember what Mr. Rogers said? Mr. Rogers said, mistakes are my friends. And so I think that's really a good way to teach and to learn for all of us.
And to me, it's not necessarily about matching, it's about relating.
Yeah, that's good.
And so it's how do we relate to it, and do the fabrics relate to each other in some way that's pleasing to me, to my eye, that's pleasing to your eye. And so we brought that mannequin in because when we were checking in with Claire earlier, it's like with the combos, so you have 3 fabrics that you got, and they're the colors that you really like. What proportion are you how are you going to use those proportionately? And somebody, I think it maybe is Jan, asked about how much yardage to get. So Marcy said all the combos have 3 yards. Some have a yard of 3 different fabrics, some have a yard and a half. Frankly, from one combo, you can probably get 2 t-shirts.
Yes, you can.
Unless you're extra large. Well, I'm like a double X, and I think I can. And sometimes the fabric gets pieced together, whatever, but you want to look at what is the proportion that you want to use of those fabrics. And you can hang the fabrics, over your body in front of a mirror, or you can put them on here. Put them on there.
Because I think if you're only working flat, and this is where I think garment sewers can learn from quilters, is hang it on a hanger, put it on a mannequin, put it on your body, and see how the proportions relate to your own sense of harmony, because we all have a different sense of harmony.
And Catherine, I love the way
are stuck being a little bit safe. So it can be fun, be bold, try something different.
I love that. And I think it takes just stepping out of the envelope just a little bit. And then once you're outside, you kind of get used to being outside a lot and thinking more in different terms. And
so that goes back to the yard and a half. A yard and a half is usually enough for a t-shirt. Of a 60-inch fabric. How much should you buy? If you're going to make a t-shirt, a yard and a half is probably good.
And this too is very, very subjective, because I used to shop with my friend Diane Erickson, who I adore.
All right.
And we'd be in the fabric store. I'm buying 5-7 yards. Diane is buying a yard or a half a yard, because we work completely differently. Another answer to that question of how much fabric is to think in terms of lengths. What am I going to use it for? If it's going to be a dress, do I need a length for the front, a length for the back, a length for the sleeve, and some extra for whatever? In my life, here I am with all the fabric in the world that I could ever want. I make mistakes. I change my mind in midstream. And this happens when Gwen and I are working together. Sometimes we'll go, that sleeve didn't work. So I want another length of fabric to cut another piece. In the design world, sample yardage is usually at 5 yards for a garment or 10 yards for a garment, where they will cut 3 garments and they test it out to see how does it go together twice, and then the third time tells them how long it's going to take to produce the garment, beginning to end. So there's a lot of different ways to look at how much fabric am I going to buy.
And sometimes not having enough fabric is just the little kick that you need to get creative.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's part of the reason why I like the cool combos. It makes you think in terms of 3s or 2s and causes you to go, well, I could put this like this and then balance, and it'll balance out. And I think that's another reason why I like the cool combos. It makes you think differently, which I adore. I really do. I know this is something that we didn't talk about before, but just to throw something to you, what are your favorite fabrics?
Oh, it's like which child? Which is
it's the one I'm working on at the time, or the next one. The next one that's sitting on the design table.
I love it.
For me, a Ponte is wonderful always to work with, because it's so stable, but it's a knit. And I'm standing here with my hand on this fabric.
Does that feel good?
Oh, it feels so good. This is the cotton lycra. So it's like 95 or 97% cotton with enough lycra so it has really good recovery. But it's so soft and so smooth. And it's like might be dangerous to wear a t-shirt made out of it. But it feels really good. And then and this is the stuff that we get in France. And then but my shirt,
I love these shirting cottons,
men's shirtings that I'm not sure where they come from, but they're Italian. They feel really good on my skin. Really, really good.
It's like wearing your boyfriend's t-shirt.
Right. Yes, Italian mills are dreamy. They're just
right. And we're going towards more and more natural fibers as much as possible. Partly because they feel so good, and
they do,
because they're more ecological.
And in my own sewing, just for fun, sometimes I really love to work with knits. So a t-shirt can be a quick garment if I've already proofed the pattern. But then I love to make the switch to a woven, to working with linen or cotton or silk, whatever. So,
well, talk a little bit about kind of the care and sort of the treatment that a lot of your fabrics that you like. What's your favorite care techniques?
Well, it's like pre-wash it as much as you can. Some things you might not want to pre-wash, but pre-wash it. Cold water, gentle cycle. And, if you're concerned, throw a sample of it in the dryer. Otherwise, with the French knits and with these shirtings, it's like put it in the washer, put it in the dryer. Nothing on hot. And then once it's sewn, it always goes on a hanger. It never goes back in the dryer because most of us know that the dryer, with the heat and the boom, boom, boom in the drum, that's what kills fabric.
So, first of all, I would say let common sense prevail. In my world, I don't send anything to the dry cleaner anymore.
I don't either.
Never.
I don't either. Yeah.
Maybe a coat but I can't remember the last time I set foot in a dry cleaner. Some fabrics you never want to put in the washing machine, and they're few and far between, but silk organza would be one because it's naturally crisp. You're not gonna, you might dip it, but my solution is I take a 4-inch strip of my fabric. I cut it across the width, and then I cut it in half. So I've got 2 long rectangles. If it's a fraying fabric, serge the edge. I put it in the washing machine on gentle, along with my other gentle laundry. One piece goes in the dryer, one piece gets air dried. And then you can actually measure the piece beforehand if you want to. That way you'll know. Now, some people, like our wonderful friend Nancy Murakami, she is famous for, she calls
beating
it,
the
she said, I like to
up.
beat up on my fabric. So she would take a piece of silk organza and throw it in the washer dryer to get that sort of wabi-sabi, worn look. So a lot depends on what you want,
and a lot depends on your washing machine.
Yes.
Because front loaders are much gentler on your fabric than top loaders. And frankly, we have a new top loader with missing the agitator in the middle. I hate it. I much preferred the agitator in the middle. You had much more control over it. And the computerized ones, it's hard to pull it out if you want to.
Yeah.
So, and we've had stuff that we've washed and it came out great. And then we've had customers that said, I washed this and look what happened. Well, I don't know what they did to it. But so you really have to know your washing machine.
Well, and two, don't you agree that because of the high quality of your fabrics, that the truth of the matter is, unless you're out there wallowing in the dirt or something, or you're on the set and the star of a movie and you're being chased by the FBI or something, you're not going to be looking at a garment that's filthy, that it is lightly soiled. And so a gentle wash cycle.
Right. Yeah, that's usually good enough. And air drying, I think, is best. With linens, I like to take them out of the machine when they're almost sopping wet and hang the garment on a hanger and then kind of pull the seams, let the water do the work, and then it gets, I really love a lightly crumpled linen.
I love it. Well, one last question here, and that is, what would you recommend as the best fabric for a newbie to start with, or someone who's coming back to sewing? What do you think is probably the best to start with?
I'd say a shirting,
a
shirting cotton,
or a quilting type, a really good quilting type cotton. Some of the quilting cottons are a little crisp, or kind of crisp, and they don't have such a nice hand for clothing. But I think linen is a good starter fabric. Cotton is a good starter fabric. Shirting,
woven.
But I would,
or a knit,
I would start with a woven, and then I'd move to a ponte.
Although, tell us, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about. Oh, go ahead. People
who start sewing knits don't have the fear of knits that old veteran sewers who've never worked with knits have. So
or worked with the old knits that the stitches never stayed in. You know, that it would just skip and you'd tuck it away. So
what I would say about knits is, if you're going to work with the knits, you really need a walking foot. That makes it doable.
I love how you feature your Japanese wovens, and I just like kind of a description of those, and kind of how did that evolve into your collection so that you chose them to be a part of your collection? What do you like about the Japanese wovens?
Well, I think, the Japanese, any textile that comes from Japan, new, ancient, old, they're masters. Beautiful. They're masters. Their cottons, they will sort the cotton according to what field it was grown in and how it was sorted. So the quality, anytime you see a fabric from Japan, you know the quality is beautiful. And I would say the same thing is true of France and Italy, is that those fabrics, they come out of old traditions. And the quality on them is just better.
And it's consistent. And in Japan, the summers are really hot. And so they know what to do with cotton.
One last question from Lolly is, what kind of soap do you recommend?
We just use whatever's in the house. And frankly, we buy the brand from Costco.
The EOS. Or whatever we can get.
If you have a really fine fabric, or if you have a wool that you want to hand wash, what I learned as a weaver is that you do not use woolite. Woolite is like the worst.
I don't either.
You should use an unscented shampoo for horses.
Whoa.
Because it doesn't have anything in it, and they want their coats, the hair, to be really, really beautiful.
I love
we don't use that, but that was what I learned long ago as a weaver.
I love it. You guys, I can't thank you enough for this. This has just been so fabulous.
Claire, it was so much fun.
Isn't this the truth? I mean, it's like having a fun day on Saturday.
Thanks to those of you who hung in there with us.
Yes.
I love it. Well, we're going to call it quits. I know you guys have to get back to work, and we have to now, enjoy and take notes from what you've learned, what you've taught us. And I really loved it very much.
Do come check out our website, marcytilton.com. We have beautiful, beautiful fabrics.
Beautiful, gorgeous things.
Don't sew. I have friends that don't sew and they subscribe to the email just because they love
the emails
the
are
photos.
Yeah.
I love that. And you can subscribe to the email on site.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you guys very much.
Thank
This
you.
was tons of fun.
Happy
See
creating.
you.
Yes.
Be well.
Be
Bye.
well.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.